Hi, Brian Meerman's here again from BloomTech. I'm so glad you're here today because we're going to be building onto the concepts you previously learned to take the next step of building your Sketch app. On day one, you learned how to call methods. Today, we'll continue with that concept, but we'll introduce the idea that some actions produce answers. And those answers can be utilized to customize how our programs run. Our goal of the day is to learn how to draw colorful lines on the screen. But then, we're going to learn how to connect those lines to the current location of the mouse's cursor. Being able to get information from the mouse will be vital as we get closer to making a working sketchpad.
Here's our goal today. We want to make it so that the mouse, when moved, will draw a line that connects from the center of the screen to the mouse's location. This is going to get it closer and closer to what the pen looks like because we want to make certain we know where the mouse is at any moment in time. So, to get to that point, we have multiple steps to get there, but we're going to learn how to use methods that return answers and then use those answers as values that we can put into our program. So the first thing we're going to learn how to do is literally just how to draw a line. So let's take a look first at the painting tool itself and realize that they have a draw line method inside of it. Move that down a little bit. We have this draw line method right here that takes in an x1, a y1, an x2, and a y2. These are coordinates on a screen. So we need to give it one endpoint and another endpoint. And all we have to do is go into our sketchpad. And right now, let's go ahead and leave these other things here temporarily, but we're going to go right below the interior sketch surface. So this white spot. We're going to use the ability to draw a line by using paint dot. That's who we're asking to do it, the painting tool. We'd like to use the draw line method. We need it 4 individual integers. So do paint dot. Let's go ahead and do a draw line. Now those 4 integers represent the x and y coordinates where we want to be. So 4 individual integers. And so maybe we want to go from, let's just get the top left corner of the screen. That's the coordinate 0, 0. And let's say we do the bottom right coordinate of the screen all the way to the bottom right. That would be the coordinate 600 over and 400 down. That would make a line that connects from the top left to the bottom right. Let's go ahead and stop that, run it again, and see if we get the right result. Look at that output. We have just made a line from one corner to the other. Now, if you'd like to update the color of the line, we have the ability to use another painting option here, where we have a set line color. We can give it a color. We're allowed to give it either a color, a single color, or 3 individual numbers. Let's try both, just for the sake of it. I'm going to go ahead and do a paint dot, and then let's see what it was called again. It was called set line color, and we give it color. So set line color. We could say, let's do color dot, and then let's just make it line. It's going to be a very, very green one. And I'm going to do is I'm going to make another line as well. Let's go ahead and duplicate that by copying and pasting. And let's do one that takes 3 separate numbers this time, because when you're generating a color, you can choose either one color or you can give it individually the red, the green, and the blue. Now, I don't know a lot of the red, green, blue colors on top of my head, but if I wanted to, I know if I did 255 red and 0 green and 255 blue, that would be full red, full blue. That would probably make some kind of really nice purple, nice bright purple like a magenta. Let's put this in a different location. Let's say we do this at, say, halfway across the screen. So 300 across, 0 down, and let's go 300 across and 400 down. That would be 300 over, 0 down, 300 over, 400 down. That should hopefully make a vertical line. And what I want you to do is challenge yourself to figure out how would you make a horizontal line instead. There it is. I got my nice vertical line. Now I can do these numbers pretty well because I'm really, really used to those coordinate systems. But for you, you might have to pause and think, okay, where should everything go? And so again, challenge for you, try it on your own. How could you create a horizontal line across the screen? All right. Promise that the idea here is to use methods that return answers. And so far, I haven't done that. Let's go ahead and take a look at a new class. So we have another class in here. I'm going to go ahead and open up the generator PDF. I'm just going to open that into a new tab. And I'm going to go ahead and make it so we can see this thing and realize that this one's a little bit different in terms of how it looks. So this generator class has a method called random int and another method called random int. So 2 different methods called method overloading. You have 2 methods with the same name. They take different results, different possibilities that you send them in. So this first possibility is you send it a single integer, upper bound. And the second one, you send it a lowest integer, a lowest value, and a highest value, upper bound, lower bound. These are going to generate random numbers. Let's just think of an example. Let's say we were trying to roll a dice. Dices have 6 sides. So maybe we would use a random int where the lowest value of the dice would be a 1. And the upper bound, we'd have to figure this one out, but the upper bound is actually not the number you want. It's 1 higher than the number you want. So we would actually want a 1 to 7, for example, to generate a dice. If you want to generate all the possible scores on a standard 0 to 100 quiz, where you have 100 possible, actually 101 possible options, you might use this first one. It says, let's just send in the number 101. Why? Because we want a number from 0 inclusive to upper bound, which is exclusive. That is almost how every single thing works when you're programming, is that the top number is usually not including. So if I did 101, we get 0 to 100 possible options for like a quiz score. And the difference between these that you've seen in the past, if I go back over here to the painting tool, this draw line method has void as its type. What that means is that it doesn't give you back an answer. But if you look at the generator, this random int, they have int as their type. And what that means is that when you call this method, you will generate an answer, and that answer can be used anywhere you need an integer. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a random integer, this method, random int, should generate a number, and anywhere we need a number, we could instead use this method. So how are we going to put that into our code? Well, let's imagine instead of my current vertical line or your horizontal line, let's say instead of saying I want it to be the color 255, 255, what if I were to randomly generate that number? What if instead of 255, I actually got it to be a random number inside there? And all I need to do is I need a number. But this generator actually does generate a number. So we're going to use the class name, which is generator dot random int, and then we'll build the thing. So let's try that. Let's say generator random int, that's the method itself. In the parentheses, we need to give it an upper bound. There are 256 possible colors for red. So it goes from 0 to 255, so I'm going to put 256. Let's just see what happens with that. There we go. There's our output. No longer is it purple. It's actually a very bluish color. Why didn't it change very much? Because we kept a red as a random number. I don't know what number that came out to be. It could be 10, 50, 100. I have no idea what number that came out to be. But if we want to make it completely random, all three numbers random, we could use the same bit of code, the same generator, and decide to put it into each of the three locations. Now, this gets to be a really long piece of code. So one tip to do is if you have a really long line of code, find something like a comma, hit enter, and make that a nice separator. So I'll do that 3 times so that I can see this vertically, that my set line color is still getting 3 integers. They're just individually being calculated separately. So I'm going to run that with a full random number set. There's a random color this time. This time it came out to be some kind of darker green. So every time I run this program, I'm going to get a different result at this point. Now, that was one piece. Let's go ahead and add more to this. Well, now that we have the ability to draw a single color across the screen, I want to show you something. We are currently putting every bit of code in the initial launch, and that means it happens exactly once, which means that when this program runs, we get exactly what we see on the screen. But what if we don't want that anymore? So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and delete the corners. We don't need those anymore. So we're going to go ahead and delete those. Those are just to get an idea of where the coordinates are on the screen. So that'll get rid of the 4 circles. But I'm also going to take this random line we just did. I'm going to take it, I'm going to cut it, and I'm going to put it into my update. So I'm just going to put it into update instead of initial launch. And this is the extra line. The green line is going across the screen right now. I'm going to delete that. So at this point, we're back to just a background color, which is our, in this case, cyan. We have an interior surface, which is white, and that is happening on initial launch. But by putting something into the update, what that means is that every moment in time, approximately 60 times per second, this code's going to happen. And because it's randomly generating those numbers, that means we're going to get a lot of random numbers generated. So I'm going to run that one more time, but with my code down here, with only one line being generated. Look at that. We have this completely psychedelic looking line that's just vertical and doing everything else. So we are now using a method that generates a result and getting the result and putting it into it a value location. Normally this would have been an int. So let's figure out how we do that one more time. Right now, our line is drawing always from 300, 0 to 300, 400. It could have been anywhere. But what if we were to go ahead and put this back at, say, 0, 0? That would be the top left coordinate is our first part of our line. So we're going to have a line that goes from here to some other location. Now, what if we could constantly recalculating where we want this to be? Instead of a specific number, what if that was a value that kept changing for us? We'd like it to be the location of the mouse. Where on the screen is the mouse? Well, let's go back over to our files and look at the fact that there's a mouse info PDF. Let's open that one. Now our mouse info PDF has, let's see, if you have a mouse info value, you have the ability to use get X and get Y. That's going to be extremely useful. And they give you back integers. So any place we needed an integer, we now have the ability to put an integer in. Just zoomed in a little bit too much. So what I want to do now is I want to replace these 0, 0, that's the starting point. That's where I want my starting point to be, with the location of the mouse. We happen to have a mouse info variable that keeps track of the entire mouse. That mouse info variable has the ability to use these methods like get X and get Y. So do you know what you would put here? What would you put there? Think about it. Try it yourself before you see me do it. And then try it yourself here. So here's what I would do. I need the mouse info to do an action. So I'm going to do mouse info, and I'm going to ask it to do a dot. So I'm asking it to use one of its abilities, its methods. The method I want to use is the getX method. And because that method hands back an integer, then it can be used anywhere an integer can be used, and I needed an integer for my draw line. Okay, I'll do the same thing here, mouse info dot get Y, and let's run this project. And here it goes. Nothing's showing up right now, but that's because we need a mouse on the screen. And once we have a mouse on the screen, look at that. We have these lines going to wherever the mouse currently is. Now, this is fantastic. Gives you a cool thing, but let's do one last piece of this. Could you turn this into the starburst you were asked for originally? So the starburst means that we want the center point of the screen to always be the location we're starting from. Right now, we're starting at 0, 0. So could you make this a starburst where it always starts in the center, and as you move your mouse around, you get a line connected to the center of the screen to the mouse's location? Try that on your own. All right. Hopefully, you thought about the fact that to do that, we need to not put it at 0, 0. We need it at the center of the screen. 300, 200 is the exact center. That's making me memorize things. I actually don't like any of these numbers we're putting in our code right now. So I don't like the fact that we have these numbers up here. What I like to do is like to programmatically figure out where those numbers are. Because maybe I have a bigger screen and a bigger monitor, and maybe this is just this 600 by 400 was temporary, and maybe it works on a much bigger screen. Maybe I'm trying to use it on a phone and I want to use a much smaller screen. So I want to make this something I can recalculate all over the place. Well, again, let's figure out what we have. The screen itself knows information about itself. It knows how big it is, and it knows the background color, for example. So if I go over here one more time and I pull up the screens PDF as a new tab, we will find out that every screen has in it a method called getHeight and getWidth. How would we ask our screen value here to correctly calculate the center of the program without us having to type it in each time? What do you think you could do here? Try it yourself, see if you can get an idea. Here's my answer. I would have asked the screen. That's the variable. I would ask it to use a dot and say, I want to use your getWidth method. And that is a method and needs parentheses. So I look over here. Do I need to put anything in it? No, I just need to say getWidth with parentheses. That gives me back an integer. Now, the funny thing is that I don't want that integer. I actually want, that's going to be like 600 across. I want the halfway point. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to divide it by using just a little bit of arithmetic here with a division sign by 2. Divided by 2. Do the same thing with this one, and I'll say screen.getHeight divided by 2. Go ahead and close some things so you can see this a little bit easier. It's a long line of code there. When you have a long line of code, what should you do? You should find any kind of comma, hit enter on it, and see if it lines up so much better so we can read it now. So now we're saying, hey, Paint is the one that can draw individual lines. I want you to draw a line where? I want you to draw a line from the screen's width divided by 2 and the screen heights divided by 2. Remember, that's our x coordinate and that is our y coordinate, to the location of the x and the y of the mouse. So let's run that final time and see if we get our perfect starburst. Okay, we have, hopefully, our starburst. Now, depending on how fast the computer is running right now, you can get some really quick lines in here, but you can make this nice, neat starburst. Now we're getting closer and closer to be able to draw our lines where we can actually draw where the mouse is only to where the mouse used to be, but that involves our next step. Hopefully at the moment you're thinking, that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool picture.
Day 2 is done. Hopefully you're now feeling more comfortable with calling methods in Java. This versatile programming language you're learning is used for so much more than this sketch app you're building. In fact, Java powers just about every web experience you use today, from ordering food online, to your smartwatch, to rideshare apps. The fact that Java is used practically everywhere means Java proficient developers and engineers are really in high demand. Through this Replit class, you're building the foundations of those skills. Of course, you're going to need more in-depth training to take it to the next level, and that's where BloomTech's backend development course could be an exciting option for you. Head on over to bloomtech.com/Java to see what I mean. Then join me again on Replit for day 3 of Let's Build a Sketch App.